All right, guys. Yesterday, you guys had a new lesson over comparing and ordering integers, or all positive and negative whole numbers. Today, we're taking it one step further with comparing and ordering decimals, which is our next lesson, practice 6-3. This is a little more challenging than what we did yesterday, but I'm going to try to help you understand it the best that I can. And if you're still having issues with the practice today, I will open up time for a Google Meet. And you are also welcome to message me in Google Classroom for extra help as well. So let me go ahead and go over to the lesson. This is 6-3. We're still talking about rational numbers. And today we are specifically comparing and ordering decimals. So first things first, we haven't really got to talk about what a rational number is yet. A rational number is any number that can be written as a quotient of two integers in which the denominator is not zero. Again, you can't have zero as your denominator. It's not possible to divide by zero. So whenever you read that is a quotient of two integers, something specific might come to mind, something that we've talked about a lot this year, and that would be fractions. Fractions are quotients of two integers. So any number that you can write as a fraction with one numerator, one denominator, that is considered a rational number. So most numbers that you all know about would be considered rational numbers. We actually don't talk about irrational numbers in sixth grade. All right, integers, which is what we just learned about, are rational numbers because we can always write integers as a whole number over 1. In this example, the integer -3 is a rational number because I can write -3 as the fraction -3 over 1, because -3 divided by 1 is still -3. Okay, today we're talking about decimals. Decimals are rational numbers because we can also write those as fractions. If you remember a few weeks ago, we practiced changing fractions to decimals to percents and back and forth between those three things. All you have to do is pay attention to the place value when you're changing a decimal to a fraction. So if you have a fraction or a decimal like 0.2, you can change that to a fraction by looking at your place value, that last digit in your decimal. The last digit here is a 2, and the 2 is in the tenths place. So your denominator would be tenth, a tenth. And your numerator is the number in the decimal. This is a 2. You have a 2 in the tenths place, so you could write it as the fraction 2 tenths. If we have 0.23, we're going to look at that last digit in your decimal, the 3. What place value is the 3 in? And you should know that the 3 is in the hundredths place. So your denominator is going to be hundredths. And the number of hundredths is the total number that you read there. You read 23. So this as a fraction can be written as 23 over 100, or 23 hundredths. That makes sense because if you said this decimal out loud, or if you wrote this decimal in words, you would write 23 hundredths. Okay, sometimes you're going to be given a decimal that has a whole number and a decimal added on. So we have 11.6. Well, you still have to look at what place value your number ends in. Your number ends with a 6, and a 6 is in the tenths place. So if the last number is in a tenths place, your denominator is tenths. And then whatever your total number is in that decimal, this is 116, you would write 116 over 10. In this decimal, we have 11.06. Again, we're looking at that last number in our decimal, and that is in the hundredths place. So, hundredths is our denominator. Our total number is 1,106. So, this is written as 1,106 over 100. Now, I'm really not going to be throwing any numbers that are in the thousandths place at you guys. You're really working with the ones place, the tenths place, and the hundredths place in your practice in this chapter. Okay, this is a quick check. If you want some extra practice on your own, you need to write each decimal as a fraction to prove it is a rational number. So, you guys can take a minute or two. You can pause this video and practice this on your own if you want. I will go ahead and tell you the correct answers. To write negative 0.75 as a fraction, you have to think about what sign you have. Is it negative or positive? When this value is a negative value, so I keep my negative sign. The number that I'm looking at is the number 75. That would be my numerator. And I want to know 75 what? 75 over what? So to find your denominator, you have to look at that last digit, which is a 5, and the 5 is in the hundredths place. So place value would be 100. Your denominator would be 100. Okay, 1.7 as a fraction. It's a positive number, so no negative sign. And your total number is 17, 17. And you write that over the place value you end in. The 7 is ending in the tenths place, so that would be 17 over 10. And the last one in our quick check, if you have negative 3.14, we keep our sign, so it is a negative sign. I'm going to keep that negative sign. And then I'm going to write the numbers that we're given. We're given a 3, a 1, and 4. So that's 314 over whatever place value the 4 ends in. That 4 ends in the hundredths place. So that would be negative 314 over 100. In your practice today, you will be asked to write a decimal as a fraction to prove it's a rational number. So this is the exact same steps that you will be doing to answer those questions. Okay. Another thing you need to understand how to do is plotting a decimal on a number line. Okay. So to plot a decimal on a number line, you have to understand place value again. Okay, we're going to look at the place value in the tenths place. The tenths place is the easiest decimal place value to plot, because if you go into the hundredths place or the thousandths place or further than that, you are going to be making a lot of very tiny tally marks that are going to be hard to add. So the first thing you ask yourself when you are plotting a decimal on a number line is, what two whole numbers is this decimal between? So if Vera owes her brother $1.70, this is a debt that can be represented by negative 1.7. If you owe somebody money, you are in the negative. So plotting this decimal on a number line, you have to know what two whole numbers is negative 1.7 between. One number that it is between is a negative 1. So I'm going to have a negative 1 somewhere on this number line on one side. And if it's negative 1.7, you have to think, is this going to be between negative 1 and negative 2? Or is it going to be between negative 1 and 0? It is going to be between negative 1 and negative 2. So if you think about where negative 1 and negative 2 is on a number line, one is going to go on the left, one is going to go on the right. So between negative 1 and negative 2, we know that negative 2 is less than negative 1. So negative 2 has to go on the left. Then negative 1 would have to go on the right. We talked about numbers, decimal points being in the tenths place. The easiest way to split this number line up is by splitting our one whole into tenths. So I'm going to make 10 tally marks. Okay, that's close enough. So I'm plotting the point negative 1.7. If I am counting the point negative 1.7, I have to start at negative 1 and count over 7 tenths. So this would be like negative 1.0. The next one to the left would be negative 1.1. The next one, negative 1.2. Negative 1.3. Negative 1.4. Negative 1.5. Negative 1.6. And this would be the point negative 1.7. So at that point, I would put a point at negative 1.7. In this decimal, you have the decimal negative 2.4. This might be a time where you get out a piece of paper and you try to plot this on your own. So I'm going to give you a second to plot that on your own, and then I'll show you the answer in a minute.